At this moment in hockey history, the Nashville Predators currently find themselves in 7th place in the Central Division after 37 games. They have a record of 11, 19, and 7. 29 points in the standing has them well far out of a playoff position at this time and very far behind first place overall. I'll update the entirety of the Central here coming up. On the road, the Predators' next game, that's where it'll take place. It'll be in Minnesota. As a matter of fact, it'll be less than 24 hours after their previous game ended in Winnipeg. The Preds' road record of the season is 3-12-4. The Predators have scored 88 goals on the season. That is the least amount in the Central Division. The Predators have given up 117 goals. That's a goal differential of -29. Now, I mentioned Minnesota is the Predators' next opponent. It's the second night of back-to-backs. So let's talk about the Minnesota Wild. Let's update you on the Central Division, and let's talk about the remainder of the Preds' upcoming week ahead. Let's start with the Central Division. That's the easiest place. At the end of Monday night's action, the Winnipeg Jets are in first place after 38 games skated with 55 points on the season. The Minnesota Wild are in second place with 48 points. More on them in a moment. The Colorado Avalanche in third place with 44 points. First team on the outside looking in from the automatic qualifying playoff position is the Dallas Stars in fourth place with 43 points. Utah's got 38. St. Louis has 38. That's fifth and sixth place. Nashville in seventh place with 29 points. And Chicago Blackhawks in last place, where they've been for the last couple of seasons, with 26 overall points. Now, for the Predators, the rest of this road trip and the week ahead, well, of course, this game preview right here is closing out the year 2024 for the calendar year. We'll begin the calendar year 2025 Friday in Vancouver to be the first night of back-to-backs yet again for the Predators. Saturday in Calgary, and then returning to Winnipeg for the second time on this road trip on January the 7th. On January the 11th, the Predators' first game of 2025 at Bridgestone Arena will be against the Washington Capitals, and on the 14th of January, the Predators will welcome in the Vegas Golden Knights. For the Predators and the Minnesota Wild, this is the second of 3 regular season meetings for the Central Division rivals. It is the second and final meeting in Minnesota for the regular season. We go back to November the 30th when the Predators fell 3-2 in overtime, so the Predators were able to pick up a point against the Wild in the first meeting of the season. UC Stars got the start, 25 out of 28, taking the loss in overtime. O'Reilly and Svechnikov picked up the goals for the Predators. Gustafsson picked up the victory for the Minnesota Wild, going 25 out of 27. Chisholm, Spurgeon, and Kaprizov picked up the goals for the Minnesota Wild. These two teams will meet one more time this regular season. That'll take place on January the 18th when Minnesota makes its only regular season trip to Bridgestone Arena in Nashville. Now, let's talk about the Minnesota Wild for just a moment. Second place overall in the Central Division after 37 games skated. They have a record of 22-11-4, 48 points, has them 19 points ahead of their next opponent, the Nashville Predators. On home ice, reasonable record of 9-8-1. Minnesota Wild are actually a much better road team than they are home team. On the road, 13-3-3. On home ice, 9-8-1. Minnesota has scored 108. They've given up 101. That's a goal differential of +7. Now, the last 5 games completed for the Minnesota Wild. We go back to December the 20th. It was a 2-1 loss versus Utah on the 21st of December. The next night, a 5-0 loss at the Winnipeg Jets. On the 23rd of December, a 4-3 win versus Chicago. Then the Christmas break would come and go, and we'd pick action back up on the calendar on the 27th of December, a 3-2 overtime win at Dallas. Most recently on the 29th, a 3-1 loss versus Ottawa. Gustafsson got the start, 34 out of 36, and picked up the loss. So, the Predators coming in after playing the night before, Minnesota has had a day off. Injuries for the Nashville Predators before we talk about the NHL rankings in this matchup. Smith on IR, another 4 to 6 weeks anticipated on his recovery. The Predators have dropped back to last place in the NHL and scoring 2.38 goals per game. It is 32nd overall. They had made small gains moving up to 31st, now dropping back to 32nd after being shut out in their most recent game. The goals for on the Minnesota Wild side of things, better, 2.89. That's 21st in the NHL. Not great, but certainly better. Goals against the Nashville Predators, 3.16 is 21st. Goals against for the Minnesota Wild is 2.68. That's 6th best overall in the NHL. In the shots on goal category, 29 shots on net for Nashville is 12th best in the league, while the Minnesota Wild are 28.1 shots on net per game. That's 19th overall. Minnesota also 19th in shots against at 28.8. The Nashville Predators giving up 29.4 per game. That's 25th overall. Special teams finds the Nashville Predators and the Minnesota Wild pretty close when it comes to power play. 18.9% conversion rate for the Preds is 20th in the league. 20 conversions, 106 opportunities. For the Minnesota Wild, 17% on their conversion rate is 24th in the league. 16 conversions on 94 opportunities. When it comes to penalty kill, the Predators have dropped out of first in the NHL and are now in second. 85.7% is their kill rate, second overall in the NHL. And the Predators have given up 16 power play goals against. When it comes to Minnesota Wild's penalty kill, well, 30th in the NHL is quite the opposite of what the Predators are, about a 70% kill rate and 27 power play goals against on the season. When it comes to the individual scoring leaders for each of these teams, well, Kaprizov has been highly impressive this season, always plays very good against the Nashville Predators, already has a goal against the Preds in the one game they've played against each other this season, has 23 total goals this season, plus 27 points to add to that for 50 overall points. Boldy's at 13 goals, 18 assists for 31 points. Rossi, 12 and 17 for 29. Matt Zuccarello still getting it done at 7 and 13 for 20 points. And Faber, 5 goals, 14 assists for 19 points. On the Nashville Predators side of things, well, the numbers stagnant, have not changed, but we had recently seen quite a bit of uptick, a lot of streaks coming to an end with this most recent Nashville Predators game. Philip Forsberg still paces the Predators, 9 goals, 21 assists, 30 total points. Jonathan Marchessault's at 13 and 13 for 26. The captain, Roman Josi, is at 7 goals, 17 assists for 24 points. Steven Stamkos is at 11 goals and 11 assists for 22 points. And Ryan O'Reilly's at 8 and 13 for 21. Anticipated goaltender matchup, we know that we'll see a Noonan in net for the Nashville Predators on the second night of back-to-backs, with UC Saros going the first night in Winnipeg. A Noonan 2-1 on the season for the Nashville Predators, 1.80 goals against, averaging .941 save percentage. Really excited to see him match up against the Minnesota Wild, and so far as a Nashville Predator, he has been absolutely outstanding. Gustafsson anticipated to get the start in net, took the most recent loss for the Minnesota Wild versus Ottawa, but did pick up the victory in overtime back on November 30th against the Predators. On the season overall, 16-6-3 with a 2.25 goals against average, a .923 save percentage. That's a good number right there. And 2 shutouts on the season. So looking forward to this one. For the Nashville Predators, they need a bounce back. First night of the back-to-back did not go so well in Winnipeg. We'll detail that one out thoroughly coming up here in the next segment. But for the Preds, they've got to figure out a way to get their road woes turned around. Only 3 wins throughout the season. They got 4 more opportunities on this road trip. There's no such thing as an easy stop when you are as bad as the Predators have been on the road this season. So the Preds got to find a way to start getting some points, got to find a way to turn some things around. Minnesota's a perfect place to do that, but it is the second night of back-to-backs, and that can be difficult. Noonan, though, he's given the Preds some pretty solid opportunities. Maybe a backup goaltender stealing one for the Nashville Predators. I can absolutely see that happening. That's going to do it for getting you all set up for this game. Let's go back and talk about what happened the previous game. That was against the Winnipeg Jets in Winnipeg for the Nashville Predators. A measuring stick game against the best team in the Central and one of the best teams in the entirety of the NHL. It's the Reverse Sports Full Game Recap. It's coming up next right here on the Renegades Puck Podcast.